Welcome to Innovation Pulse, your quick, no-nonsense update on the latest in cleantech and EVs. First, we will cover the latest news. Waymo is expanding its Robotaxi fleet with new autonomous vehicles. Electric trucks are gaining traction along the I-10 corridor, and quantum computing is set to revolutionize energy research. After this, we'll dive deep into the innovative world of battery swap technology and its impact on EV infrastructure. Stay tuned. Waymo has revealed it operates over 1,500 commercial robotaxis and plans to expand its fleet with more than 2,000 autonomous Jaguar I-Pace vehicles. This expansion is part of a multi-million-dollar investment with Magna, which will build the vehicles at a new factory in Mesa, Arizona. This location was chosen for its proximity to key markets like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Austin, as well as its favorable weather for testing. The factory will incorporate new processes to quickly transition vehicles from production to public use, allowing them to pick up passengers shortly after leaving the site. Additionally, the facility is set to integrate the sixth-generation self-driving system into future vehicle models. When fully operational, it can produce tens of thousands of autonomous vehicles annually. Let's now switch to the impact on sustainability goals. Electric trucks are gaining momentum despite shifts in U.S. federal energy policy. A coalition of major companies is testing electric trucks along the I-10 corridor, focusing on reducing emissions and improving charging infrastructure. This initiative, led by the Smart Freight Center, includes giants like Microsoft, PepsiCo, and DHL, aiming to accelerate long-haul electric vehicle deployment. Despite political challenges, such as the dismantling of the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, the coalition continues to expand with new members like Electrolux and IKEA. These companies emphasize sustainability and decarbonization strategies within their supply chains. New financing models, like those from Nugen Capital, are emerging to support the transition from diesel to electric trucks. The industry is eagerly anticipating the Tesla Semi's production, though some brands remain cautious about aligning with Tesla. Scientists at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, are exploring how quantum computers might tackle complex energy problems. By collaborating with local quantum companies, NREL is developing benchmarks to test this technology's practical utility in energy science. With current quantum computers being error-prone, these benchmarks will help determine when quantum algorithms have a computational edge. NREL is focused on how quantum computing could solve problems like stochastic optimization and the Anderson impurity model, both of which are critical in energy research. These efforts, alongside collaboration with over 100 quantum companies in the region, aim to prepare for when quantum computing becomes reliable. The ultimate goal is to use this technology to achieve breakthroughs in energy research, potentially transforming how we approach computational challenges in the field. And now, pivot our discussion towards the main cleantech topic.
Today, we're going to explore a fascinating alternative to traditional EV charging that's gaining momentum in China: battery swap technology. Instead of waiting for your electric vehicle to charge, imagine pulling into a station and having your depleted battery swapped out for a fully charged one in about 5 minutes. China has been advancing this technology for years, particularly for commercial vehicles, but also increasingly for personal cars. It's a potential solution to range anxiety and charging infrastructure challenges as the world transitions to electric mobility. Joining me today to discuss this innovative approach is transportation technology expert Yakov Lasker.
Thanks for that excellent introduction, Donna. I'm excited to dive into this topic with you today. Battery swap technology represents a fascinating paradigm shift in how we think about EV infrastructure. I'm ready whenever you are with your first question.
Let's start with the basics. Can you explain how these battery swap stations actually work in practice?
Absolutely, Donna. Battery swap stations operate on a surprisingly simple concept. Instead of charging the battery while it's still in your vehicle, these stations physically remove the depleted battery from underneath your car and replace it with a fully charged one. At a typical station, like those near Beijing's Olympic Sports Center, drivers pull onto a platform with an integrated system that automatically handles the exchange process. The Hokol procedure takes around 5 minutes, which is comparable to refueling a conventional gasoline vehicle. Some stations even display slogans like, "Battery swap stations are equivalent to gas stations for electric vehicles," highlighting the similarity in convenience and speed compared to traditional refueling.
5 minutes is certainly impressive compared to traditional charging times. How extensive is China's battery swap network currently?
China's battery swap infrastructure has seen remarkable growth in recent years. By 2023, the country had approximately 3,470 battery swap stations, with around 1,600 of those added in that year alone. This rapid expansion follows China's 2021 official launch of a pilot battery swap scheme across 11 cities. Leading the charge is NIO, a Chinese electric vehicle company that has built over 3,300 battery swap stations throughout China. Additionally, CATL, which is both China's and the world's largest EV battery producer, recently announced plans to partner with oil giant Sinopec to develop a comprehensive battery swapping ecosystem across the whole nation. This level of development far outpaces any other country's efforts in battery swap technology.
That's substantial growth. What advantages does battery swapping offer over traditional charging methods?
The primary advantage is time efficiency. While even the fastest chargers typically require 15 to 30 minutes to bring a battery from 10% to 80%, a battery swap can be completed in about 5 minutes. This significant time saving addresses one of the major pain points for electric vehicle adoption: the inconvenience of waiting for batteries to charge during longer journeys. For commercial vehicles like taxis, logistics vehicles, and heavy-duty trucks, the advantages are even more pronounced. These vehicles often need to maximize their operational time, and lengthy charging stops represent lost revenue. Battery swapping allows these vehicles to stay on the road almost continuously, similar to how conventional vehicles operate with quick refueling stops. Additionally, by separating battery ownership from vehicle ownership, it can substantially reduce the initial purchase cost of electric heavy-duty trucks, making them price competitive with diesel alternatives.
That makes sense for commercial applications. But I'm curious about the challenges facing this technology. What are the main obstacles to widespread adoption?
Despite its advantages, battery swapping faces several significant hurdles. Perhaps the most fundamental is the ownership question. When you swap your battery, you're essentially giving up your new battery and potentially receiving an older one with reduced capacity. This creates a psychological barrier for many private vehicle owners who view the battery as an integral part of their purchase. Other challenges include the need for standardization across manufacturers, substantial capital investment in batteries and infrastructure, and physical space requirements for swap stations. Companies also need to maintain enough charged batteries at each station to meet demand, which can be difficult during peak times. One NIO owner mentioned almost missing an important meeting because no fully charged batteries were available at a suburban station. These issues, combined with the rapid advancement of fast charging technology, have limited widespread adoption for personal vehicles, though the technology continues to show promise for commercial fleets.
You mentioned fast charging technology as competition. How is that developing in China? And does it pose a threat to battery swapping?
Fast charging technology in China is advancing at a remarkable pace. By this year, mainstream electric vehicles in China will support high-voltage fast charging of 800V and above. Major Chinese automakers, including BYD, Xpeng, and NIO, have developed vehicles with supercharging technology that can charge batteries from 10% to about 80% in approximately 15 minutes. In fact, Just 2 months ago, BYD announced a new charging system they claim can deliver 400 kilometers, about 250 miles of range, in just 5 minutes of charging. That's twice as fast as Tesla's superchargers. BYD plans to establish 4,000 of these flash charging stations across China. By late 2026, over 13 million vehicles in China are expected to be equipped with high-voltage fast charging capability. This rapid development certainly creates competitive pressure for battery swap technology as the convenience gap narrows. If charging times continue to decrease, the primary advantage of battery swapping becomes less compelling for many users.
Interesting competition between the two approaches. How has the Chinese government been involved in promoting battery swap technology?
The Chinese government has provided substantial support to accelerate battery swap adoption. In their 2021 pilot program across 11 cities, 3 locations specifically focused on battery swapping for trucks. This strategic approach targets the commercial vehicle sector, where the technology offers the most immediate benefits. Provincial governments have also offered significant financial incentives. For example, in 2021, Hainan Province announced a one-time subsidy covering 15% of the initial investment in equipment for battery swapping stations built and operated between 2021 and 2022. This governmental backing, combined with China's position as home to the world's main lithium-ion battery manufacturers, has created favorable conditions for rapid expansion. The relatively inexpensive and abundant local supply of batteries has been a key enabler for China to promote battery swap stations so quickly compared to other countries.
Let's talk about the business models. How are companies structuring their offerings to address the ownership concerns you mentioned earlier?
Several innovative business models have emerged to address the ownership dilemma. The most common approach separates vehicle ownership from battery ownership. Under this model, consumers purchase their vehicles without batteries and then rent the batteries directly from the company. This significantly reduces the upfront cost of the vehicle while eliminating concerns about receiving an older battery during swaps. However, this model creates new challenges for automakers, who must now own and manage large battery inventories, which ties up substantial capital and increases financial risk. Some companies are exploring more flexible approaches, including mobile battery swap vehicles that can charge batteries in locations with lower electricity prices before deploying them to high-demand areas. For commercial fleets, especially in sectors like mining or factory operations with predictable routes and usage patterns, customized battery swap solutions are proving particularly effective.
You've mentioned that commercial vehicles seem to be the sweet spot for this technology. Can you elaborate on why battery swapping works so well for trucks and taxis?
Commercial vehicles present an ideal use case for battery swapping for several reasons. First, these vehicles often operate on fixed routes or within designated service areas, making it easier to strategically place swap stations. Second, they typically have centralized fleet management, which simplifies coordination and scheduling of battery swaps. For heavy-duty trucks specifically, battery swapping addresses a crucial economic barrier. The purchase cost of battery electric heavy-duty trucks was initially very high, with batteries accounting for a substantial portion of that cost. By separating the battery from the vehicle, users only purchase the vehicle body, bringing the price closer to diesel trucks. Additionally, commercial vehicles carry much larger battery capacities than passenger cars, meaning they take significantly longer to charge even with fast-charging technology. The time advantage of swapping is therefore much more pronounced for these vehicles, and likely to remain so, even as fast-charging technology continues to improve.
Are there any creative uses for these battery swap stations beyond just providing charged batteries for vehicles?
Absolutely. One of the most promising secondary applications is using battery swap stations as distributed energy storage facilities. Due to China's booming renewable energy sector, particularly solar and wind power, there's a growing need for energy storage to stabilize the power grid, given the variable nature of these energy sources. Battery swap stations, with their large inventory of batteries, could potentially serve as grid balancing assets. Companies could charge their batteries during off-peak hours, when electricity is cheaper and more likely to come from renewable sources, then use or sell that energy during peak demand. Some battery swap operators are already exploring this opportunity. According to industry reports, 100 battery swap stations would be equivalent to a $50 million energy storage power station. These stations could also provide resilience during extreme weather events, supporting local distribution grids when they're knocked out.
That's fascinating. Is battery swap technology gaining traction in other countries? Or is this primarily a Chinese innovation?
While China is certainly leading the way, battery swap technology is gaining interest globally, particularly in developing markets where EV infrastructure is still in its early stages. India has been especially active, announcing a new battery swap policy in 2022, specifically to promote electric vehicle sales. In 2023, Taiwan-based battery swap company Gogoro announced a $2.5 billion partnership with the Indian state of Maharashtra to build smart battery swapping infrastructure. We're also seeing adoption in Africa, with Kenya announcing a partnership with electric vehicle and battery swap company Spiro in 2023. Even in the United States, after trials with Uber in San Francisco in 2021, battery swapping startup Ample has formed partnerships to integrate its technology with Netherlands-based carmaker Stellantis and Tokyo's EV infrastructure. These international developments suggest that battery swapping may play a particularly important role in regions where traditional charging infrastructure is less developed.
I'm curious about the historical context. Is battery swapping a completely new concept, or has it been tried before?
Battery swapping actually has a surprisingly long history. The concept was first tested and used more than a century ago, before electric cars fell out of favor to gasoline-powered vehicles. In more recent decades, an EV battery swap company called Better Place pioneered the modern approach beginning in 2007. Based in Israel and operating there and in Denmark, Better Place aimed to reduce battery costs while addressing range anxiety and charging times. Despite securing almost $1 billion in funding, Better Place eventually declared bankruptcy in 2013, citing difficulties in consumer adoption and insufficient support from automakers. Shortly after, Tesla briefly explored its own 90-second battery swap service, with plans for swap locations between major city pairs, like Los Angeles and San Francisco. However, Tesla abandoned the initiative just 2 years later due to low market acceptance. China's State Grid began researching battery swaps around 2006, viewing it as a way to avoid large-scale power grid transformation, and their persistent development has led to today's more successful implementation.
Let's talk about infrastructure requirements. What does it take to build and operate these swap stations?
Battery swap stations require significant infrastructure investment. They need physical space comparable to traditional gas stations, specialized equipment for automated battery removal and installation, inventory management systems, and a substantial stock of batteries. They also require robust connections to the power grid to charge multiple batteries simultaneously. Land acquisition can be particularly challenging, as stations are most valuable in high-traffic urban areas where space is limited and expensive. Some operators are forming partnerships with traditional energy companies to repurpose existing gas stations, which already have suitable locations and some necessary infrastructure. China National Petroleum Corporation, for example, has already converted some of its gas stations to include both charging and battery replacement facilities. Other companies are developing mobile battery swap vehicles to circumvent land constraints and take advantage of locations with lower electricity prices for battery charging.
Are there any quality control issues with battery swapping? I imagine battery condition could vary significantly.
Quality control is indeed a significant concern. Battery performance can vary based on age, usage history, charging cycles, and environmental exposure. This inconsistency creates friction in the user experience. One taxi driver I interviewed in Beijing, who has a vehicle capable of both charging and swapping, admitted that if he receives a good battery, he avoids swapping it until absolutely necessary, waiting a full month before making another swap as required by his company. Station workers report frequent disputes with drivers who receive batteries with reduced capacity. One worker mentioned that drivers sometimes yell at staff or even threaten to call police when they receive a subpar battery. These quality variations undermine user confidence in the system. Companies are working to address this through better battery management systems, tracking individual battery performance, and implementing quality guarantees. But it remains one of the more challenging aspects of the battery swap model, particularly for consumer vehicles, where expectations are higher.
How does battery swapping fit into China's broader environmental and energy goals?
Battery swapping aligns well with several of China's strategic objectives. First, it supports the country's push to reduce dependence on imported oil by facilitating electric vehicle adoption. China accounted for almost two-thirds of global EV sales in 2024, demonstrating their commitment to this transition. Second, as I mentioned earlier, battery swap stations can potentially serve as distributed energy storage facilities, helping to integrate the country's rapidly growing renewable energy capacity into the grid. This addresses one of the key challenges with wind and solar power: their intermittent nature. By charging batteries during periods of excess renewable generation and discharging during peak demand, swap stations could help balance the grid while reducing carbon emissions. Finally, China aims to establish global leadership in green technologies, and battery swap technology represents another area where they're pioneering solutions that could potentially be exported worldwide as part of their broader clean technology strategy.
Looking ahead, do you see battery swapping and fast charging as competing or complementary technologies?
I see them as complementary technologies serving different segments of the EV ecosystem. Fast charging will likely remain the dominant solution for private vehicles, especially as charging times continue to decrease and more high-power charging infrastructure is deployed. The convenience and ownership aspects of keeping your own battery and charging it simply make more sense for most private owners. Battery swapping, meanwhile, will continue to find its niche in commercial applications where vehicle downtime translates directly to lost revenue. Heavy-duty trucks, taxis, buses, and delivery vehicles benefit most from the quick turnaround time of battery swapping. We're also likely to see battery swapping play an important role in countries at earlier stages of EV adoption, where building out comprehensive fast-charging networks would take significant time and investment. Ultimately, having both options available strengthens the overall EV ecosystem and provides flexibility for different use cases and markets.
We've covered a lot of ground on this topic. What do you think is the most important takeaway about battery swap technology?
The most important takeaway is that battery swapping represents a valuable addition to our EV infrastructure toolkit, rather than a universal solution. Its primary advantage, rapid energy replenishment, addresses a critical pain point in electric vehicle adoption, particularly for commercial applications and in regions with limited charging infrastructure. What's particularly interesting is how this technology might follow different adoption paths globally. In China, with its well-developed EV market and charging network, battery swapping may remain somewhat specialized. However, in countries just beginning their electric transition, it could play a more central role by offering a faster path to convenient EV usage without waiting for comprehensive charging networks. The potential secondary benefits, such as grid stabilization and renewable energy integration, also make this technology worth watching as we navigate the complex challenges of global energy transition.
Thank you, Yakov, for sharing your insights on this innovative approach to powering electric vehicles. It's clear that battery swap technology offers some compelling advantages, especially for commercial vehicles and developing EV markets, even as it faces competition from increasingly rapid charging solutions. It will be fascinating to see how these complementary technologies evolve in the coming years.
It's been my pleasure, Donna. The electric vehicle landscape is changing rapidly, and innovations like battery swapping show how we're rethinking every aspect of transportation infrastructure. I'm particularly excited to see how these technologies might help accelerate EV adoption in regions where traditional charging infrastructure remains a barrier. As with many aspects of the clean energy transition, we're likely to see diverse solutions tailored to specific needs rather than a one-size-fits-all approach.
And thank you all for tuning in to Innovation Pulse. Until next time, keep your finger on the pulse of green technology innovations reshaping our world.
Thanks for having this conversation today. See you on our next Innovation Pulse episode. We've explored how Waymo is expanding its robotaxi fleet with autonomous vehicles and the progress in electric trucks, as well as China's innovative battery swap technology, making waves in the EV sector. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends and colleagues so they can also stay updated on the latest news and gain powerful insights. Stay tuned for more updates.